Evening, everyone. Today's Monday, February 7th, 2022. It's 6:30 p.m. It is time for the Board of Selectmen, Highway and Cemetery Commissioners meeting. First order, as always, this board stands for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Stephen.
Before we get started, Board of Selectmen, on behalf of the town, board members, we send our deepest sympathies to the family of Steve Weiner, who lost his mother last couple days. Goes without saying, you only have one parent, one mother. I know I speak for everybody. We send our sympathies to Steve, Chrissy, and their entire family.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Also want to announce that Mr. Joseph won't be joining us tonight. He had a doctor's appointment per Paul. All right, item 2 is the consent agenda. Approve the minutes of January 24th, 22.
Just a motion to approve.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, second by Mr. Siganovich. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. And without objection, I'd like to take item 5B out of order. We have Jeff Blake's here, our town council. He's going to update the Board of Selectmen relative to the status of the betterment program for private roads. Mr. Ruda, do you want to kick off? And
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask our town planner and highway superintendent to come up as well so they can discuss what kind of progress we've made to date on the two projects that are before us.
Okay.
Evening.
Evening, guys.
Mr. Chairman, we've had ongoing conversations about the betterment program. There's a few actions that need to happen at the upcoming town meeting. I asked Mr. Blake to come in and update the board as to what those actions might be and update the public at the same time. And I've asked the highway superintendent and planner to tell us where we stand in terms of getting a quote for a cost for both projects, so.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ruda.
So,
Jeff and Bob?
as you probably know, there are two projects that we're working on, Tobin Drive and Tobin Farm area and Partridge Hill Road. So we've asked the planning board's consulting engineer, Jeff Walsh, to prepare a cost estimate. And I've been providing him with a lot of information. There's quite a history on both of those projects. So he's been reviewing that information, and he will get back to us in about a week or so with his proposal to estimate the cost of completion and to oversee the construction of those two projects.
Okay. So Tobin Farms and Partridge Hill proposals in about a week. Is that what I heard? Okay.
Yes.
Awesome.
So then the plan would be to let the residents know what the estimate is and get back to them with that information, and then they hopefully would decide to go forward with it. But if they think it's too expensive and they don't want to, then I think that would be sort of the end of it for those two projects.
Okay. Sullivan? Questions?
Yeah, I had a chance to briefly speak with council before the meeting. So a project like Tobin, for example, which at one point the planning board gave them permission to exhaust the bond to finish the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a number, but in my mind, I think Mr. Horn was here last year and he said something to the effect the project was well over like 90% completed. And there was like a detention basin. At the joint meeting, Mr. Watroba talked about the wooden guardrail on the overpass there.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked, like I said, Attorney Blake, is Tobin also closer in a different way since the town that allowed them to finish the road to town standards, the actual road, exhaust their bond through permission of the planning board? Would they be able to come back now and petition a public hearing to get the last few things that need to be waived if the engineer waives it, and they would be accepted as a public way without the betterment program? Or is it, I know I talked to Mr. Ruda one time, and my impression was that it's a two-way path for them. Betterment if they have to complete everything, And if they're so close, they only need a couple waivers, and the engineer agrees, can they go through the standard road acceptance?
Well, it's a good question.
I think that's more, I think that's more a
Right.
question for Attorney Platt.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. I do think there are two paths. If you're really that close, and there could be some waivers from the planning board. Now, because there is a subdivision plan on record, in order to waive those requirements, you would have to reopen the hearing. The interesting question here is, as we had discussed earlier, typically when a developer develops a property, at the end of it, there's a provision in there that gives all of the storm basins, the detention ponds, the retention ponds to a homeowners association. Once the homeowners association has that, and I've done a few of these, they then will often come in and petition the planning board to waive certain conditions. Once those are waived, then it's up to the town as to whether or not they want to accept that as a public way. As a board of selectmen, ultimately, you're the ones that lay it out, so it would ultimately be up to you. But in your situation, I think that you said that there is no homeowners association, but the developer is gone. So I think that it's likely that the homeowners themselves could petition to reopen it and ask for the waivers. And then I think you need to have an eye on, there's a difference here in your bylaw. Your bylaw has the ability for the town to repair private ways and charge a betterment to the people that use that for access, okay? Which is different than accepting a private way as a public way. In your bylaw, it provides for you to actually go on, you as the town, and make those repairs, but it doesn't require you to accept it as a public way at the end. You have an acceptance process, but again, that would be something that would have to go through the town. The Board of Selectmen lay it out. Typically, the planning board weighs in and says, you know, this way isn't up to standards, and it has to be brought up to standards. So, you know, I think when we're talking about this and the folks come to you and they ask to have their private ways repaired, if they have an eye toward getting it later approved as a public way, they probably ought to let that be known, and the town, I think at that point, the highway and the planning board may or may not require some additional things to be done. It's not gonna be just a straight, we're gonna go in there and resurface something and fill a couple of potholes. That's what I think needs to be done. It needs to be kept in mind when you're doing this. Now, the administrator had asked me earlier, you know, what do we have to do for town meeting? I think that there was a thought where you wanted to try to come back, go to town meeting once, you wanted to fix the ways, bring them up to standards, and then have them accepted as public ways. Unfortunately, the way the acceptance statute is written, the Board of Selectmen have to lay out the public ways, and I think one of the town meetings I was at, you've done this before. But the way it works out is, I don't believe you can accept a way until it's been built out. So I don't believe you're gonna be able to do one town meeting and done. So under your bylaws, you can charge a betterment. So I think what you would need to do is you'll need to expend those monies. So you'll need to appropriate funds for the repair at a town meeting, and to make it explicit that those will be paid by betterments, so the rest of the people will see that they're not footing the bill for this. Then once that is done, once we have that all done, you would later have to come back for the acceptance. And I believe in your bylaw, there's also a requirement that the acceptances can only be done at a spring town meeting. Streets shall be accepted only at the annual spring town meeting. So if you were to come up with a scenario where you want to fix this in the summertime, and you want to have it accepted so that come winter you can plow it and do whatever as a public way, you may consider amending your bylaw. I'm happy to help you with that. Strike out annual spring town meeting and just say at an annual or special town meeting you could bring the street acceptance to. That's a majority vote at town meeting. It's effective upon approval by the AG. I can see zero reason why the AG would disapprove this. The only issue there might be, it might take her 60 days. But if we did it at the annual, you know, we're into summer. So if everything got done during the summer, somebody could petition and put this on to accept as a public way on a fall special town meeting.
I think, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Sullivan.
not to follow up with Jeff, I think the impetus behind the Springtown meeting was issues for the former highway superintendents worry about setting up plow runs. They didn't want to get accepted like X number of square
Yep.
footage of road. So that's why I believe the original intent was spring. I mean, we have a new town highway superintendent, maybe opinions have changed, and I get your point. So if that would have happened, could they put the amendment to the bylaw, say Article 4, and then Article 5 would be a fall town acceptance? Could you put that on as like a placeholder? But you wouldn't be able to, right, because you need 60 days.
Wait a minute, I don't understand your question.
If they had to put it on, say they didn't get it all done in time for the spring, we want to put it on the fall town meeting to amend the bylaw to accept.
No, we would amend the the bylaw at the Springtown.
So we'd have plenty of time to do that.
Right.
And then they wouldn't be able to put it on, if Article 4 is accepted, we want to vote on Article 6, like if their road was ready. I can't foresee a scenario where it would be, right, between public
So,
hearing and.
I think the question, through the chair, is that, do we have to put a placeholder on in the spring to accept?
No,
We can just put it on for the fall, no problem.
just, well, provided the bylaw change takes
For
effect.
pass,
Yeah,
right.
no, we don't need to put
Okay.
no, we
Yeah,
do.
we wouldn't accept a requested warrant article to that effect for the spring. We'd say, no, we're gonna go one step at a time.
Right.
If it
Well,
was,
I mean, you can accept it for this spring, but the Board of Selectmen is the one that lays them out, and it's not gonna be up to standards at that point. Because you're getting your funding at the Springtown meeting, so.
but if it's a road like the one we were talking about, that's already, if the paving is acceptable by the town, it's already been.
Oh,
That's what I was talking about, that, like that
oh,
specific
I'm sorry,
instance.
I missed it. Yeah, if it's ready to go, then they can put it on the Springtown meeting.
But they have to get those waivers reapproved, the things that weren't finished. So that's what I'm saying, it's probably a timing issue.
Yes,
And put the cart ahead of the horse, would we amend the bylaw? We try to amend it in the spring then, obviously.
you try to amend it in the spring.
And then they'd have 6 or 7 months time, okay. Right.
Yeah,
That's what I
yeah.
just wanna make sure.
Good.
Yep.
Okay.
Is there more presentation, or is it just commentary and questions?
The general discussion, just to bring everyone up to speed.
So, the question about, is 100% of the cost for the betterments has to be through those neighborhoods, the people that live on those streets, or can there be some kind of combination where, you know, I would propose that if the town could find the funds without raising taxes to cover like engineering and legal costs, then it's kind of like putting all, you know, meeting them part way for the streets that are trying to
We can't,
approve the betterment.
Well, your bylaw says the cost of the repairs and of borrowings undertaken by the town pursuant to chapter 44 shall be apportioned to and among the benefited property owners along the road so repaired / improved as a betterment pursuant to chapter 80. So it would appear that this certainly contemplates them getting the entire betterment without the town kicking in. Because typically under chapter 80, there is the ability for the town to apportion a certain amount. They might do a betterment for 80%, and the town would pick up the tab for 20%. I'm not sure that your bylaw is written that way.
So, Mr. Chair, to Attorney Blake, we've always been told, we being the body, town can't expend funds private ways just for, what was it, light maintenance, whatever the mold was way back when. So what Mr. Johnson's proposing, wouldn't that be prohibited just by law?
I think what Mr. Johnson is proposing sounds to me like paying for Attorney Blake's time, the cost to send the engineer out to give us a quote, you know,
From
for
other
the
sources.
betterment in general.
Yeah,
The
we could
smaller expenses,
Yeah, we
the
could-
stuff that really kinda unnecessarily adds to the cost that we could probably have an opportunity to,
Yeah, we could find,
not pass
find
on.
some funds, through other sources and without having to raise taxes. Is there a way for us to meet them part way, at least on some of those smaller costs?
Well, your bylaw does authorize you, and you need a bylaw to authorize you to do work on private ways. Your bylaw, the last section there with respect to, betterment assessments and in the private ways says the Board of Selectmen shall determine the scope of the repairs, including whether and to what extent any of the following shall be undertaken: grading, paving, resurfacing, scraping, and filling of holes and impressions with sand, gravel, or other suitable materials. Drainage repairs shall be included to the extent required by the public convenience and necessity, as determined by the Board of Selectmen upon advice and cost of estimates from the highway superintendent. So, I mean, it does appear that the Board of Selectmen does have a role in this in determining the scope of the repairs and the like. And I'm not sure that that would be something that, I think you could charge a betterment, but I'm not sure that, the next sentence, the next section says, the cost of the repairs and of borrowings undertaken by the town shall be apportioned. So, you know, there may be some room in there for the town to pick up the tab for some engineering and the like, the cost estimates from the highway superintendent.
Mr. Johnson?
So the definition of apportioned doesn't necessarily mean 100% of the cost.
Well, it says shall, well, I think we may be talking about two different costs. The cost of the repairs and of the borrowings shall be apportioned to and among the benefited property owners. So if the cost to repair is, I'm gonna pick $100,000, and it costs 3% a year to borrow, that would appear to be required to be apportioned to and among. Now, up top here, where you have the Board of Selectmen making their determination, that does not appear to fall within the mandatory cost to be appropriated. I think you certainly can charge that as part of the betterment, but I don't know that it falls within that mandatory cost.
So, Mr. Chairman, if we, following Mr. Johnson's logic, the cost of, for example, legal review, the cost to send an engineer out there and give us a quote is not necessarily the cost of construction on a private way. It's a smaller cost. And if we have the ability to maybe move shift that cost off of the property owners on the private road, maybe that gives them a modicum of relief, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I heard is that, you know, we're open to doing something like that if there was a vehicle, right?
I think we have to. Right. There's a long list of items to handle, and you know, you hear about 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. You know, we're the board now, so if we have the opportunity to do something that's not necessarily, you know, 100% of all costs are covered by the betterment, then I think there should be some way to do that.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify something Mr. Johnson said. I just want to make sure I've got this right. So the actual construction, the painting, the paving, yeah, I've got painting to do at home. The paving, the drainage, what have you, that would be apportioned to the residents that it's affected by. But the town could help out with engineering, the beginning phases before construction starts.
To make the determination of the scope of the repairs needed.
Okay. Now, my question to go a step further, what would we need to start that process? Because I know the betterment process has there's a petition part of it.
Yep.
Would we need to have that petition before we begin that process?
I believe you would want to have that petition before you begin the process. And just so that you know, that you have to receive a petition signed by abutters who own cumulatively at least 50% of the linear footage of such way or road. So it's not 50% of the people, it's based on frontage.
Okay, so basically the process then is someone comes to us with a petition.
Petition.
We, if we follow Mr. Johnson's idea, which I think is a great idea, we start the process with the engineering, the planning, what have you, and then the residents would get their road, get up to snuff. It would be apportioned to them, and then they would come to town meeting to get the road accepted. That's the path, correct?
That's the path.
The work's done, yes.
Yep, that's the path.
I just like to have things clear and out there, and so folks can understand.
Mr. Chair, to Attorney Blake, we also had some conversation at a previous meeting. One resident got up and said, just because we get the estimate, if it's too high, and we decide not to do the work, we as a town, we can't force them to do the betterment. Like you use your $100,000 figure you gave, if it comes up 100, and they come back and say, well, I know 51% of us signed up, but that's too big a number. We just say, okay, we file that engineer report down the road for.
Well, I mean, you know, we could take by eminent domain the property, and we could force them to, you know, eminent domain is eminent domain, and then we would go in and we could bring the road up to the standard, and we could charge them a betterment. Now, I'm not saying that that's something that anybody else wants to possibly do, but you asked me,
Right.
can we? So, yeah, you could. I don't think I've ever seen it done that way.
I got one more question.
I don't think that was the
No, that was not my intent. So if 51% of the linear, 51% of the linear frontage accepts the betterment program, the other 49 that may have said no, they have no choice. It's spread out,
It would appear that that's, yes.
and it goes on. What if it's 10 years, 20 years? They sell the house, it gets passed on as like a lien, right? The town would have a lien.
That is correct. It actually goes on your tax bill.
Right, that's what I thought.
And the assessors have the ability to assess for a period up to 25 years.
So whatever term and condition the petitioners agree upon would pass on to heirs or subsequent owners.
Yep, it would be a lien on the property. You are correct. Yep.
Which, not getting anybody's business, if you're subject to this selling their house and somebody wants to buy it and they owe $8,000 on the lien, they can say, take care of the lien first.
Yeah, typically that's the way it's done, but you don't have to do that. You can sell a house with a lien on it.
And we can't force them, as long as we have that charge coming to the town every year, we can't force them to even up if they sell the house.
No.
I think the spirit of that question, Mr. Chairman, was, when it was asked at a few meetings ago, was the majority of the residents on the street were interested in perhaps pursuing it. It wasn't the town trying to force any sort of a taking or anything like that. So of course, I answered the question, no, you know, we wouldn't necessarily force you to do anything if you were the one who were exploring the idea to begin with.
Right. Because remember the subsequent comment was, well, we'll bring these incomplete roads to town meeting and get them accepted as is, and that was not.
You can't, no, can't.
They gotta go through you first,
Right.
through the layout.
That'd be up to code. It's, okay. Jay?
Just, this conversation's pretty much
Yeah, just between us.
in its conclusion. In conclusion, right?
You can hear it home anyways.
I have a question that, you know, I don't know, and it just came to my head. I've talked to like 3 or 4 people that had no idea they were buying a house on a private road. Is there any laws in the books that a realtor or a contractor or a developer needs to explain what that means? Because it doesn't feel like it. I've never spoken to anybody.
I mean, it's part of the listing. It shows public utility, public
Right.
access. I mean, it's part of the original listing.
So it's just buried in the minutia of the
But every
the
Does it have
listing.
gas? Does it have oil? Is it on a public way? Does it have town services?
And every
It's all
listing,
part of the listing.
and every listing has a disclaimer, not every, seems like every buyer and their agent must do due diligence to verify information provided.
Yeah, but
Some
once
kind of
again,
language.
that's minutia. It's not like it's, we don't have a requirement that has to private way on the sign or something like that, so at least they would say, oh, what's that mean?
Well, generally speaking, they don't put if it's gonna be, I'm going down the wrong road, but a private way in perpetuity, we'll say private way. It might say like Johnson Lane, private. But usually they don't put the signs up to the very end. That's like one of the last things they do.
It's a shame.
I know. I lived on a private way, and my realtor let me know way in advance, and at that time, the contractor did a great job maintaining it, and the town accepted it. Built another subdivision in town and was having some problems with it. Same company.
That's all I got.
Okay, that's it?
I got one more question for Attorney Blake. Might as well use him
Sullivan.
while he's here.
He's here.
And, Bill Scanlon can help me out if I say the wrong thing. We have what we call a Form H, bond reduction form. So if we have a subdivision, it's $1 million bond. At one time, I was on the board at the time, and I've said it publicly, I'll say it again. I should have known these answers back then, I don't recall. Right now, it's a contingency. The developer can come back to the planning board like a year and say, okay, I'm 70% done, send the engineer out. Engineer says, yeah, they're down to 200.
Yep.
Are we obligated by law to have to honor a bond reduction request? Could the planning board eliminate that Form H going forward? Because I think, now that I've been doing it for 20 years, the developers, if they have to put $1 million up, that $1 million should stay there till it's over and said and done. So I guess my question, are we legally required to offer a bond reduction to a developer?
Well, we are required to offer the bond reduction. Now, the way we get around that is that we have our engineer go out and err on the side of caution. So rather than, the developer may say it's 70%, but we can say it's only 50.
And can we put a contingency on that? Can we say 50 plus 10 because costs might go up next year?
Typically, the bonds have a contingency in them. The requirements have a contingency in them.
Because I think that's what's happened to a lot of these private ways, and most of them have been around, like Jay said, we're the board now, before all of us, and the bonds were so insufficient back then. Like the one you and I talked about, they exhausted their bond to finish the road at the approval of the planning board, who controls the issuance of the bond acceptance. So I think that's what's happened. These developers have gone, they've left little to no money.
To be perfectly honest with you, that's certainly not unique to Dudley.
No.
I see that all over the Commonwealth. And, what we say is, I know it puts a lot on the town engineer, but the town engineer has to go in and with consultants and do a good job at trying to estimate what's left. And once the developer balks and stops moving forward with the repairs, we need to step in quickly, because as you know, we get escalators now that are 8 or 10% a year.
Right.
So all of a sudden, a bond that was more than adequate,
May not.
5 years, 7 years from now is not even close.
Right, and you can get them too at the, Bill, what is it, 2-year covenant usually they get for a developer? And then when the second year is almost up, they have to come back and renew.
Yep.
And my time on the board, generally the engineer would go back out and say, like you said, okay, it's been almost 2 years, it's gone up 15%. Your $1 million doesn't cover, we need $1.2 million.
Yep.
To follow up on what Jeff said, the planning board, I think, is very careful to get estimates from our engineer for the cost, what the cost would be if the town had to complete the work by going out to bid and taking into account prevailing wages. So when we authorize a reduction of security, we're very careful to make sure that that amount is the correct amount if the town had to take it over at that point in time. So we do have escalators in there, and he updates that cost every time that kind of a request comes in.
Right, which is a great strategy going forward.
Right.
We won't get into position, hopefully.
Yeah, obviously we have to learn from,
Unfortunately.
understand the root cause of these issues and to make sure it doesn't happen again. I don't care if it's new bylaws or,
Enforce the
due
rule.
diligence and enforce the rules and the laws. 'Cause look at the problems now.
Yeah.
Yes. Anybody have anything else for Attorney Blake, Bill, or Jeff on this?
Mr. Chairman, I'll work with
Mr.
Mr. Johnson to identify some source of funding to offset the cost and the burden on doing the, at least the legwork, the engineering and legal review for those who want to pursue the betterment. And I'll bring it I'll work directly with Mr. Johnson, we'll bring it forward at the next meeting, maybe,
Fantastic. Good job. Good idea, Jay.
or soon.
Okay? Awesome. Thank you, Jeff.
Are you all set with me?
We are, I believe, right?
All right.
I think so.
Yeah.
Thank you. It
Thanks
was
again. Good
Pleasure
to
seeing you guys again, and I may or may not see you at the town meeting. I don't know how Michelle wants to do it, if there's gonna be an article that I may have to get up and talk about. I may just
I
do it.
think she
We
was
talked
saying that,
about it.
yeah.
She said she wanted,
You might be it.
Yeah.
Tag, you're it.
yeah, I mean, I've done, what, 2 or 3 of your town meetings?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so, no big deal, but so I probably will see you soon.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
all your-
everyone.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for all your hard
Appreciate your
work.
time.
Thank you. All right, item 3, Town Administrator's Report. Jonathan.
I know we have other items to get to tonight, so I just have a couple of brief updates, Mr. Chairman. Bill Scanlon, Jeff Marie, and I spoke with CMRPC to confirm the town's interest in pursuing a new grant for us, which is a Shared Streets and Spaces grant that focuses on safe speeds and pedestrian accommodations, specifically at the Dudley Hill Road and Airport Road intersection. This is a grant with a fairly quick turnaround time. It would focus on pedestrian accommodations, including ADA compliant curb ramping. They'd be projected to be implemented on the westbound side of Dudley Hill Road and Airport Road, while the eastbound portions will include painted curb extensions with flex posts to delineate the new traffic configuration. So it's a quick turnaround grant. We're working on getting our ducks in a row and applying for it and see how that goes. And there was another benefit to that grant. They gave us some additional transportation money, which would certainly be appreciated by the highway department, maybe in terms of some snow removal devices for the, little plow device for the sidewalks and so forth. Hydrants and
Excellent.
so. Mailboxes would be excluded. You're usually already plowed up. What happened?
Nothing. Just keep
Um,
going.
We received our annual audit results, and they're now posted online. They went up this week. We had a meeting last week to discuss the Brandon Road Bridge that included MassDOT District 3 engineers, Webster Highway Department rep. Jeff was on the call with me, Representatives Durant and McKenna, and an aide from Senator Fatman's office. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss the feasibility of state funding for the Brandon Road corridor extending from Chase Ave into Dudley to the access road for the sewer treatment plant in Webster. The draft meeting minutes have been placed in the Selectmen's Dropbox, so when you have a chance, just take a look at those. The result was that the long-term solution, according to MassDOT, was to pursue the state bridge program. Details of the short-term solution using a modular bridge that we've previously discussed many times here at the meeting. That solution is about 60% completion, so we're gonna start looking for the final costs and a way for our own highway to offset some of those costs on the work performed. And Jeff's gonna have more on that in the coming weeks.
Great.
Let's see what else. We had a meeting this week about the plan to begin the sidewalk and drainage construction program on Mason Road. That's in the final stages. The next step will be to have a public hearing to have residents that may be impacted come in and go over any individual impacts to their property for the short term that'll be under construction. And again, I'd reiterate, there's not gonna be any takings or anything associated with that. Everything right now seems to be in the street, within the street layout for town access. And the schedule for the 2 capital improvement meetings has been pushed up by a day. The February 9 date has been moved to February 10th, and the 16th is moved to the 17th. And we're gonna try to make the meeting on the 10th. And I haven't told Michelle yet, 6:30 if possible, instead of 6. Okay. Because we have the water sewer infrastructure meeting on the same night. We wanna wrap that, so that's what I have for tonight. If there's any questions from the board, I'm happy to answer them.
So 9th to the 10th,
Yep,
The 16th to the 17th.
16th to the 17th.
16th to the 17th, thank you.
Motion to accept the administrative report?
Motion by Mr. Sullivan,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Sigenovich. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, Jonathan. All right, moving on to item 4, citizens' comments. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak on anything that is not currently on tonight's agenda? Seeing none. We'll move on to new business. We have a big piece of new business tonight. I'll invite the police chief up. We're going to vote on a new police sergeant and take any action relative thereto. Chief Wayner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, the board had declared a vacancy back in December for the sergeant's position with the promotion of Lieutenant Kolowitz. So this past Thursday, we had an assessment center and exam conducted by public safety consultants. There were five officers that applied for the position and participated in the process. I gave you a report on those candidates there. The top 3 scorers in this were Officer James Anise, or Detective James Anise, Officer Keith Remillard, and Officer Chandler Boyd. They are here this evening. So I am submitting them to you for your consideration. And I'm not sure if you wish to conduct any further business or if you wish me to address anything further, I'd be glad to. But all 3 are here, and they're certainly able to talk to the board if need be.
Yep, absolutely. So with the Board of Selectmen, we would like to invite the three finalists up to kind of answer a couple of questions. And while you guys are doing that, I'll read a statement. Tonight, the board will vote on the recommendation of the chief or vote on any other action that it chooses. Although we had 5 officers test, we have asked only you 3 top finalists to come in and speak to the board in advance of us taking any action on an appointment. Before we vote to appoint such an important role, we wanted to have the opportunity to ask a few questions of our own, not only for our own information, but more importantly, to give the public the ability to see for themselves the difficult decision that has to be made as part of this process. I will ask a series of 4 questions in random order and ask each of you to take a minute or 2 to answer. Each candidate will have at least 1 opportunity to answer one of the questions first, and each will have the opportunity to answer at least one of the questions last. Okay, hi guys, welcome.
Good evening.
Great to see you all here.
Mr. Chair, before we get
Mr.
started,
Sullivan.
just publicly congratulate the 3 finalists, but the other 2 applicants were here also. As Chief stated many times, it's just further proof that he's got some talent down there, and congratulate all 5 of them on successfully completing the process to get to this point. We're only doing 3, but we could have really done all 5.
Absolutely.
Yeah, point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, just for per our rules, we have the names. We submit 3 names for 1 position, so that's why the top 3 are here. But Mr. Sullivan's exactly right. It's good to have a good core of candidates take these jobs, and 2 of them are relatively new hires within the last 5 years. So it was a good opportunity for them to display their skills as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, first question. Please tell us about yourself, including your background and expertise with the town of Dudley and the police department. And we're going to start with Mr. Anise.
Thank you for your time tonight. My background, I grew up, born and raised in Webster, Mass. I started as a police officer here in the town of Dudley back in September 11th, 1995, when I was 23 years old. I would spend 7 years as a part-time police officer. I went full-time in 2002. Here we are 20 years later. I rose to the rank of detective within the department. It's the first detective position that the department's had in ever. So I look forward to the future opportunities moving forward.
Thank you, Jim. Next up, Mr. Remillard.
Hello, thank you guys for having us. Born and raised in Dudley. Went to Shepherd Hill, graduated, got hired in 2011 as a part-timer here. Worked part-time until 2015. Went to the Boylston Police Academy. Graduated from there. Have been a patrolman ever since. That's pretty much it for me. Member of the task force with Detective Anise, drug task force. I'm just looking forward to the opportunity to further my career in a supervisory role.
Mr. Remillard and Officer Boyd.
Hi. I grew up in the Sturbridge area, grew up in Sturbridge. I graduated Tantascwa. I started working here in 1998 as a reserve. I was appointed full-time in 2002 as a police officer. Shortly after that, I took on the roles of firearms licensing officer, and through that, I've gotten to meet most of the people in this town. And after 24 years of being a member of the department, again, I'm looking to advance my position and further myself.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I'll go next if you like.
Mr. Sullivan?
As you stated, this time we're going to do
Is
Officer
this gonna be a
Remillard.
follow-up question?
No, follow up.
Yeah, and then on for follow-ups, the rest of the
Oh,
board. That's how we.
No, I'm good then.
Good.
I thought it was just a general,
He thought we were taking turns, but we're not.
No, I don't think we are.
oh, I thought we were.
I mean, you can, but that's
Ask
not
one.
what we discussed
Right.
for 45 minutes today.
All right, question 2. How do you see your role in the department as a sergeant as it relates to your duties and responsibilities to the chief of police, as well as the officers under your charge? I'm going to start with Officer Remillard.
Role as a sergeant in our department, we're relatively small, so the sergeant's going to be a patrol sergeant. So we're basically doing the same thing as everybody in this room does now, but you're taking on more responsibility for your officers. I have great communication with the entire department. I get along with everybody. I feel like I can talk to anyone. Anybody can come to me. I feel like a sergeant position would be a great spot for me. Thank you.
Officer? Okay, Mr. Boyd?
Repeat the question again?
Again, how do you see your role in the department as a sergeant as it relates to your duties and responsibilities to the chief of police, as well as the officers under your charge?
Well, to add to what Keith said, we patrol the patrol, and we have to be there side by side with them. We have to do the job. We, as a sergeant, need to have the ability to know where to get the answers if you don't have the answers. And if you're going to ask them to do a job, you got to be willing to do that job yourself. And I think I'm the person for that job. I think I have excellent discretion, and excellent communication with everybody that I work with, including the upper administration. I think I would do well at it.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Anise?
Well, like the other two candidates said, there isn't much more I could add to that except for one big step, and that's respect. Respect of your men, respect of the chief from the top down. When you put those boots on, when you go to work, you've done the job, and a lot of those guys that you're going to be in charge of know that you've been through this before, you've done this time and time again, and that you have the answers for them. So they feel comfortable with that as a leader.
Okay. All right, question 3. The Dudley Police Department has a very active role in many community programs. What community policing programs do you participate in, and what ideas would you propose for new or innovative programs for the future? Officer Boyd.
In the past, I was responsible for the Christmas toy drive. Done that for approximately 10 years. This past year, I stepped down and let somebody younger take over that role. But I have done that, and yeah, I'll be open to anything community police relative.
Okay. Thank you. Officer Anise?
Over the years, Officer Boyd has done a great job in that role with the toy drive. Thank you.
Thank you,
Chip.
Jim.
Over the years, I've done quite a few community policing events. So we used to have block parties many years ago. That stopped, but we've done some other things. I look forward to doing the annual gun buyback program, where you happen to see many people within the community. I look forward to doing pretty much any community function along with the chief. I was the first one that was tasked with becoming the first SRO of the town. So having been working at the high school for 5 years, I got to know about 6,000 kids, 1,200 a year. So it comes back to me now where all those kids graduate, and every time I see them out, they know me. They all remember Officer Anise, but it's hard for me to remember 1,200 kids, obviously. But I look forward to any community policing events where we can grow together as a department and a community.
Thank you. And Officer Remler?
Growing up in Dudley, I was always involved in sports activities through the schools and town baseball, basketball. I know I have 2 kids, both play sports. I've coached their teams for 14 years for one, going on 3 or 4 years for the other. Inside of the department, I believe myself and Officer Pacheco are going to be taking over the Toys for Tots drive for us from now on. Trying to get other stuff going. I'd like to bring back like the sports games that we used to play with the all-star teams that come into town. Get the community involved in stuff like that again. I think that'd be a great addition.
Right. Okay. And finally, question 4. As sergeant, you serve as a mid-level supervisor. How do you see your role as advancing from buddy to boss as it relates to such matters such as the grievance procedure or disciplinary process? Detective Anise.
I don't think I'd have a problem in being in a supervisory role, having to serve a grievance or a disciplinary process. The guys that I work with, like I've been there for 27 years, so I feel well respected by the officers underneath my watch, and if I have to tell them something, they don't have a problem listening to it from me. So I don't have a problem with grievance process. Unfortunately, I'd like to talk someone out of a grievance process before it can ever get to that point, and try and work things out. But if they do have to go up the ladder, then that's the step we'd have to take.
To add on what Detective Nisa said, our department is so close-knit. Everybody respects each other. I'd have no problem with any disciplinary action based on the respect that we have for one another. We all can talk to each other. We all know and understand what goes on within the department, what to do, what not to do. As far as the grievance process, it's part of the job. You may not want to do it, but sometimes you have to do it. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Officer Boyd.
Repeat the question again? Sorry.
As sergeant, you serve as a mid-level supervisor. How do you see your role as advancing from buddy to boss as it relates to such matters such as the grievance procedure or disciplinary process?
Likewise, I wouldn't have a problem going from that position, from buddy to boss. As I work with these guys, we have the same respect from these guys, and if we told, like Officer Annie said, if we told them to do something, I think they would do it, and I think I would do well that position.
Thank you, guys. Board members? Oh, do you want to, okay, any follow-ups on any questions?
I just wanted, the question 4 I felt was probably the most important. Obviously, interaction with the public is very important, and these gentlemen all scored well in that category. And I know we've talked as a board, and I know I've talked to a lot of you guys individually. It's tough when you're in the same union-type setting. Sergeants are in the union, and you are the entry-level supervisor that has to handle an incident. And like Detective Anise said, and they both kind of echoed it, there's a lot of respect down there. And a lot of times, I believe it gets handled in-house. A senior officer or handles it. And I just wanted to publicly say I appreciate their answers, because I can imagine it will happen, as they all indicate, it's part of the job. But I think the demeanor that they've exhibited and problem-solving that they discussed, I think things will continue to be as even keel as it can be down there. We don't get a lot of paperwork coming up from the guys. They either handle it or it gets handled in-house. It's a good strategy. So I appreciate their response. Like I said, in my opinion, that was the most important question.
Okay. Jay?
I heard the words supervisor mentioned a whole bunch. I think the more important word, I think it was brought up, I think Officer Neese said it, this is a leadership position. This is, how to lead the men and women of the department in the right direction, as opposed to having to push them. Anyone want to elaborate on the difference between leading and supervising.
You wanna go first?
They're all looking at each
I'll
other.
go.
Who's going first?
Some might look at supervising as just not telling people what to do, ordering people, saying, this is the way it has to be, as opposed to a leader, as I mentioned. If you're gonna ask somebody to do something, be willing to step up and do that job yourself. So you gotta work with the troops and do the job together, as sit back and just point fingers and be a supervisor.
Yeah, like I had said earlier, you're a patrol sergeant here. You're not in your office all day. You're out doing what the patrolmen do. You're still doing your thing. So you gotta set a great example for your shift for the rest of the department, and hopefully they follow suit with whatever you do.
Based on your work ethics, the group of guys are gonna follow your work ethics, and if you're a true leader, they're gonna go with you, and whatever task that we come across upon the streets out there, we're gonna complete it as a team. When we come back, either we come back with a prisoner or something, we all take care of each responsibility together, and we get the job done. So,
Okay, thank you all.
you're welcome.
Gary, you have anything?
I don't know what else I could ask or add. I mean, Jay kind of took, I was going to ask a similar question. I'm not going to make you answer it again, but all great answers, really. I mean that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll agree. Just the leadership thing is, that's what, this role is a leadership position. That's why we're giving it the, respect that it deserves tonight. I wanted to say that, so.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay. Chief Wayner, you wanna take it from here?
Sure, as you can see, I think it's a good opportunity to see that these are never easy decisions, really, as they go forward, because when you have quality individuals out there that are performing these tasks, it's certainly tough to differentiate, and that's why I appreciate the assistance of public safety consultants coming through, because in addition to a written examination that they had to go through, they get put through some realistic scenarios, especially things that are applicable to that position and that job. And so it's a good opportunity to be able to evaluate the candidates throughout. And it was a good also experience, I think, for the lieutenant, who had to sit in on at least one of the questions and see how all the candidates answered. And it's a really good opportunity to see how that plays out. And I appreciate their independent evaluation with this. So as they gave me this list, that's why there's not much I could really sway from it with anything that I would add. So based upon this that we have here, my recommendation would be offer the position to Detective James Anise. He's been with the department the longest as far as both part-time and he has full-time seniority in those positions. He also participated in our lieutenant's process back in November, and he went through a second process here for the position of sergeant and finished at the top of it. So again, I wish we had a bunch of different jobs to give all these guys to do, but it's just not the case at this point. But with one position to go, Officer Anise, or Detective Anise would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, board members, Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Chair, on behalf of the board, again, I just want to thank all 5 candidates. And probably the guys that considered it and didn't put in for it, but the 5 that stepped up, put their name into the hat. I really appreciate it and congratulate you all on how well you did. So, Mr. Chairman, at this time, based on the recommendation provided by Police Chief Wayner, which was based on the assessment center scores of the 3 finalists here tonight, and based on the record of the top finalist and the excellent job they did tonight answering our questions, we appreciate you folks coming in. At this time, I'm happy to motion to appoint Detective Jim Anise to the rank of sergeant, effective immediately, effective immediately, 2/7/22.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Mr. Siganevich. Any other discussion?
Oh, no, I think I should have added with the seconder, that the list remains in place, their rankings for 2 years, depending upon being valid, qualified for the next 2 years.
Okay, is that okay with the seconder?
Certainly is.
Correct. And just, Mr. Chairman, it'd be a probationary appointment for 1 year on that position right there.
So, okay.
Then he'd be reappointed.
Include that in the motion somewhere,
Yeah.
that the position, probation period.
1 year
1
probationary.
Yes.
Okay, Michelle, you got that? You okay with that, Gary?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Discussion?
Yep.
So that corollary at the end, the 2-year.
It's part of their rules and regs.
Yes.
So if it's part of the rules and regs, why do we have to make part of the motion?
Did we do it all? We did it for the lieutenant's job.
Yeah, it's part of the regulations, but those lists will stay in effect for 2 years. But yeah, you can mention it or not, depending whichever way you wish to go. But I think it's just good information for everybody to have anyway.
So does that mean that, God forbid, someone wins megabucks and, moves to Tahiti or something?
Why are you buying?
I'll buy you a ticket.
All right.
It's like it's up to $2 now. So this process wouldn't happen?
Yes, I think the way it was designed when we originally moved from civil service at the time was to have a process and establish a list. And it would be in effect for 2 years because considering most people would either be, positions would either become available or not, it's not always like, they don't happen every week. But in case, for that scenario, if something happened, one gets appointed, now somebody leaves or other jobs open up, you don't have to start a brand new process again and do it from there. And then so unless the list is either exhausted or or candidates don't want the job, whatever it would be. But once 2 years comes around, that would be the end of it. So the lieutenant's list will stay in effect for 2 years, and we have no more. I think we'll have no more patrol officer list. So we'll have to do a new process with that. So.
Mr. Chair, that's why, it's probably a vague word, I put remain qualified. If something would happen where, for whatever reason, like Jay said, 4 guys could split the ticket, they could win together and they leave. Well, if we don't have a qualified list, we do the process over.
Don't get any ideas for you putting in for a ticket.
Apparently I already owe a ticket.
He did, didn't he? Any other questions? Hearing none, let's call this to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Congratulations, Detective. Sergeant.
Thank you.
Yeah, that'll be next time. Picture? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When have the troops come up?
Jim, would you like your wife to come up for a photo with us?
Sure.
Congratulations.
Comes with the territory.
Thank you. Don't stand in front of John, he gets blocked.
Stand right in front of John.
He knows how this works.
Well, I'm short.
Well,
Still too short.
yeah.
Stand next to him, pretend like you like each other.
All right, everybody get in, because I'm not gonna
Stand
do
up
that.
straight. Awesome. Congratulations.
Every man is a good woman here,
Hurry up.
Showed up tonight.
Say it now.
Maybe you should go.
Looking forward to that.
All right. Another great night in Dudley history. Okay. Next up, we have item 6. We have some old business. We are talking once again about the Thursday evening hours. We asked last time for the departments who wanted to change it to come to with us with some plans. Mr. Ruda.
Mr. Chairman, I want to put this on the next agenda because I'm still working on a couple issues with after-hours meetings and what the value might be in terms of
Okay.
how the schedule works out.
Okay. So we'll table that without objection?
No, that's great. We'll get it right the first time and
Yep. Okay.
I think we kind of did it.
All right, so we're tabling that, guys? All right. Item 6B, Town Accountant position. I guess we're voting to appoint Screening and Interview Committee, Mr. Ruda.
Well, Mr. Chairman.
What do you recommend?
I sent my recommendation. Was following the previous meeting. It was in the
Yep.
Dropbox, but we can certainly act on anything the board would like me to do in terms of,
What's your recommendation? Let's
let me
vote on
open
it.
it up because I don't remember.
mine's still populating here.
Appears to me he's got 3 or 4 volunteers already.
Yeah, he has a
Yeah,
recommendation.
as of Monday night, we had a volunteer, Mike Mayart, Mr. Siganovich, and Mr. Landry doing the screening. And Mr. Johnson agreed to conduct the interviews of finalists with Debbie and I. And the treasurer also sent an email of interest after I provided my recommendation, so it's up to the board.
Board members?
I feel like I should know this, Mr. Chair. The accountant does not report to the treasurer, right?
The accountant reports to me.
To the administrator. I mean, that gives us an even number. Do you want an even number? Because you can get a tie. Must make Mr. Ruder a voting member as a screener and as a final person. I don't think we should do
You
that.
really can't serve on both. It's usually better to have
That's
it
what I'm saying.
separated.
I'm saying if we accept one more, that's 4.
On the screening?
Yeah.
Well,
How do you break a tie?
well then where do you stop, right? Turns into 5, then 7, then 10, you know.
You want to ask the treasurer if he wants to consider being ad hoc? That's what he does with capital improvement.
What is it? Ad hoc?
No voting, but he can,
Be able to ask questions.
yeah, he can participate.
Rich, you want to come on up? That's a good idea.
That's what does the capital improvement.
I didn't know we called it that. That's a good point. Hi, Rich.
Good evening.
You want to ask your question?
Rich, would you be willing to be ad hoc on that board? Like,
Screening committee?
with the screening committee? Just wouldn't have a vote? You have the ability to ask questions, bring your professional knowledge.
Bring me up to speed here. We're looking for, there's a screening committee and an interview committee. I raised my hand saying I wanted to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the screening committee, as the administrator indicated, was gonna be Mr. Mayotte representing FAA, Mr. Sigenovich representing BOS plus his professional capacity. Mark Landry was gonna be representing capital improvement. So, Mr. Johnson will be our rep at the finalists with Deb Thibodeau's input and the administrator. Would you be willing to consider ad hoc with that initial screening? Is that the question?
Make sure the qualifications are correct on the applicants.
You have the right-
Absolutely.
You have the right to
The-
ask some questions.
I felt obligated to raise my hand because of the knowledge base. Put the chess piece where it's gonna do the best. I'm happy to go through, and I think I can get to a granular level of detail on a whole bunch of, a whole deal of topics, so happy to be, part of the plan.
Okay.
Appreciate the consideration.
I mean, you do that for capital improvement. I mean, you're at every meeting, you're ad hoc, but your advice and your expertise is,
I'm kind of looking for a night where I don't have to go to a meeting, but yes, I want to contribute. It's good to,
This can all be done on the clock.
there you
On the
go.
day clock.
yeah, we can do it during the day if you get the interview people in.
Right.
Really, I got a Friday night open. I mean, really, if you want to plug all the gaps.
Touche.
Thank you,
Thank
much
you, Rich.
appreciated.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Rich.
Rich. Okay, board members?
No, I don't, what it is, we just, whatever's gonna help get the right person.
All right,
Yeah.
is there a
That's all.
motion?
Don't care.
Mr. Chair, make a motion that, based on the town administrator's recommendation, that we appoint Mike Mayotte representing FAA, Mr. Sigenovich representing us and his professional capacity, Mark Landry representing capital improvement, to serve on the initial screening committee for the new town accountant.
With Rich,
Rich has ad hoc, town treasurer, in his position of treasurer, and also his professional capacity.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan,
Second.
second by Mr. Johnson. Discussion, Ms. Carey?
Can I vote on this because I'm in it?
Just abstain. You don't get paid for it.
No, I just don't wanna say the wrong thing, that's all.
You're all right. That's true, just vote.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
One abstention.
Okay.
Thank you, miss.
Mr.
3,
Chair, I
0,
also make a
1.
motion
Mr.
that,
Sullivan?
make a motion that we appoint current town accountant Deb Thibodeau, Vice Chairman Jay Johnson, Town Administrator Jonathan Ruder to serve as the final interview committee after they get the names from the screening committee.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Mr. Sigenovich. Any other discussion? None, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
One abstention. 3-0.
You learned by watching me.
All right, thank you, guys. All right, next. Student rep, Abby's not
She's
here.
excused tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Abby's excused. Departments. Let's mix it up tonight. Let's go with Jeff first.
Yeah, Jeff's been the busy one the last couple of weeks.
Excuse me. So, I guess just to start out with, I still hearing from a lot of residents about the sand salt mix that was previously offered by the department. We're no longer doing that. Just wanted to address that. I get calls or visits on a regular basis daily. We're attempting to comply as best we can with the MS4 requirements for the stormwater management program. That's when we're no longer using the sand salt mix on the roadways, and we're not using, just to clear up some of the confusion, we're not using the brine system yet. That's something that won't be funded until potentially in the spring. So it's strictly a road salt that we're using right now. We've had a good deal of storm events with where we've had to manage more ice than snow. We have had a couple of fairly substantial events that we've had to contend with, and as a result of that as well, we're realizing, as a lot of other communities, a good deal of problems with potholes. So I'm sure everybody's noticed those around town. Those have been brought to my attention. We're well aware of those. We actually, the department's armed with a hot box now. That happened to be down. We were doing some repairs to it. There's an electric heating element that had to be installed, so we were without that for a period of time. We've actually exhausted the hot top that we had put in stockpile in anticipation of dealing with potholes for the winter. So we're going after acquiring hot mix that we're then able to reconstitute and use and apply as you normally would, even in the single-digit temperatures that we've had crews out doing patching, taking care of that. So again, I invite residents or any of the board members or departments to notify me of any issues that come up with any of the issues related to snow and ice control, potholes, and I guess that's pretty much about all I have to cover right now. The town administrator covered a lot of the other issues with some of the grants that we're pursuing, that we're working on. So there's hopefully some good news in the future with those. And we'll have more information in the near future with a forum for any of the residents over on Mason Road with the project. We'll be moving forward with that. The engineer's actually ahead of schedule with the design, so should be coming along very shortly within the next several weeks.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
George?
Nothing too much. We did go out today and do some pothole patching on Mason Road, just our trenches, just to make sure that there was some big ones there, just so we don't get any complaints from the public and like that. So,
Okay.
everything's good.
Thanks, George. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, thank you for the vote from the board and everything this evening. That's another great thing that's down the line. I sent you all out my monthly report this afternoon for January. A lot of crashes, of course. I think a lot of them were weather associated back through the month. Tufts Hill was an area of particular interest. I think we had 2 or 3 rollover accidents on Tufts Hill last month. So, and I think I extended some kudos to the highway department for the last time, because the state was a little slow in getting out and putting some sand out, some salt out there to clean up that area of the road. So they came out and helped us out at one point. That really helped to prevent quite a few other accidents that were taking place there. Also, finally, the Lieutenant Kolowitz started working with my administrative assistant to try to work with LexisNexis to get a program online to have our accident reports available online for people. So if individuals get an accident, they're looking to get a report. We're trying to get that process going. So we may be starting it out small, maybe working right now with the insurance companies, making sure the bugs get worked out of it. And we're trying to work on the way that the system transitions our our accident report from our in-house CAD system off to the company. But I'm gonna give that a try, and it's no cost to us, and it's paid for by either the insurance companies or mostly that they come in to get those reports. So it's another good program, just trying to get everything boosted back up. So that's it for me. Thank you very much. Yes?
It was mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, and speak on behalf of the board and town people, we sympathize your loss.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, my mom was a great lady. She was a month away from being 90 years old, but unfortunately has been suffering with dementia for a long time and been in a nursing home for about 5 years. So there was no long suffering or anything like that. So it's always sad to lose someone close like that, but I'm sure she's in a better place. And I thank everybody, the board, and everybody else that's reached out to me for the last half a week or so like that. It's greatly appreciated, and great community and good place to be. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Chief. Rich?
Good evening again. We'll keep it short. Start with something engaging, right? I see the chairman turn away for a second. Health insurance for the upcoming fiscal year is a 0. No changes to any of the benefits, 0 increase. So that's a good position to be in. With COVID, very, very, very late, but as of January 15th, if you are a subscriber, Hampshire Council of Governments Insurance Trust, if you're on the PPO or the HMO, there is a reimbursement plan for COVID tests. We sent a flyer out with the payroll Thursday, more copies there. It's through your CVS Caremark card. You need some details. I have additional flyers down. Also have a digital in the event we just need to email it off. Water sewer bills went out today. Excise number 1, that's the big 11,000. Yeah, I know, everybody.
My least favorite, Mr. Treasurer.
Least favorite, but it's significant revenue, so it's a good thing. Remember, it's a calendar year excise, so it is for the calendar year. If you registered a car in November or December, you may be getting a 2021 in addition to a 2022, whatever it is. Last week, the Water Sewer Department had their rate study. Part of it was a walkthrough on increases to the rate, and it was supposed to dovetail into the Water Sewer Infrastructure Committee's recommendation. As much as they did a great job of walking through it, and you can watch the replay, there is a lot to be digested. I'll send the invitation to the board out now. If there is a question, reach out. There's some very subtle points. They did some modeling. There were a few questions on the modeling, but you need to start with 1 or 2 foundational items in order to get the rest of the model to move forward. If there's any questions, there was an offer from the people at Tie and Bond. They invited questions and inquiries. I'm also going to extend, if there was a question, if you just needed 60 seconds on how did we do this, happy to answer it. I know the ball is being moved forward. There's a CIP meeting coming up Thursday. The infrastructure meeting is on Thursday. And then we're going to run into a very big series of week after week after week after week. So I'll be happy to remind you, but if there's a question, happy to. Also, everybody should have received their W-2s via the mail. If for some reason you don't have them, please reach out to my office. That's the town employees. Excellent. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Rich. Dean?
Thanks. Good evening. Just a couple of things. The department recently applied for 2 grants through FEMA and DHS. We just submitted the SAFER grant last week for $535,087.38, which is for 2 full-time guys for 3 years, 100% covered wages and benefits, which is the same grant I applied for last year and didn't get.
How many guys, Dean? Was it 2?
2. And I won't hear about that probably till like August. The other one was for extrication tools. through the same grant program, just AFG, DHS and FEMA, in the amount of $70,660, replacing tools that were subsequently purchased or acquired in 1989 and 1995. So we're replacing some seriously old equipment. I'd like to thank Jeff and the Highway Department. They erected a rhino shelter for our safe house trailer to get it out of the elements. That we're housing it up at the Highway Department. So thanks, Jeff. And over the last month, I don't know if you're aware, but we've responded to a number of structure fires. They were all mutual aid towns, but I'd like to thank my staff. I thought they have done a great job responding under some extreme weather conditions with the cold and everything, but they all did a good job, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ruda.
I'd like to put the fire chief and the assistant fire chief's contract up for discussion at some point. I know everyone has a copy of some of the correspondence that was sent.
Okay, we'll do that. We also have yours to deal with.
Next few weeks or so?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Okay.
Who's on their committee? I know Sally and I are doing yours. Who's doing his?
We haven't had a committee the last.
I'm essentially
Just
gonna
you?
take
Okay.
a look at it
All right.
and communicate directly with the board.
That works. All right. All right, board member comments. Carrie?
I've got nothing.
Carrie's got nothing.
I got nothing.
Steven?
Mr. Chair, just, the department has kind of hit on it. They've all been pretty busy. We appreciate everything they do, they and their staff. They all go above and beyond. We always talk like about the highway guys. They're more than just highway guys. They're putting together rhino shelters. You know, they built bookcases here. And it's been a tough season. I mean, it was great up till January 1st, and Mother Nature wins every time, but everyone's doing a great job. And again, we say it all the time, virus numbers starting to come back down to a manageable level, whatever manageable can be described as. Again, Kerry always points it out, we have a banner. Public Health, they ran a vaccine clinic. I think they want to run another one. Personal choice, but do what you can to protect yourself and your family. And if you have shut-ins or elderly in your neighborhood that don't get out, please keep an eye on them, knock on the door, make sure everybody's doing okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Steven? Carrie?
Yeah, I
Did you have
forgot.
something?
I couldn't believe I forgot this. This past weekend, attended the Dudley Little League trivia fundraiser. It was good to see a lot of people there. The Little League did well, and
How'd you guys do?
I did fine. I won the treehouse bag. But and the other half won the 50-50, which she gave back. She didn't take it.
Oh, nice.
Gave it back to help the kids out. It was a good time. It was a wholesome thing, and yeah, it was good to see a lot of people from town there.
I think
Mr. Johnson?
the team that won was the Magnificent Seven team.
Yes,
They ended up winning.
they gave the money back to the Little League, so I won't give them too much grief.
Excellent.
But they were out now.
Anybody we know on Magnificent Seven?
Mr.
Boys
Mayor.
and Girls Club.
Oh, nice.
They had a good showing with their crew, helping out other nonprofits in town. So it's always a good sign.
Excellent.
Anything else?
Good wholesome stuff. I'm sorry, you were saying something, Mr. Johnson?
No, it was a great outing, and I'm a little biased, but thanks to the Board of Health and the public health nurse running another clinic for those that wish to get it on Saturday. Even with the weather, thanks to the Highway Department cleaning up the town hall so that could happen. It was successful even with my minimal help.
You're there in spirit.
Yeah. Awesome.
As long as I get out of the way, it goes well.
Someone's got to hold the door.
And I don't have anything tonight, anything else to add. So just, one last thing. Just like it's always a momentous occasion when we get to promote somebody into a leader role in Dudley. So we did that tonight, and happy to see the turnout by all the guys at the police department to support their teammates.
Nice turnout.
Nice turnout. And 10, adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Vice Chairman Johnson.
Oh, executive?
Second. Motion, seconded by Mr. Sigenovich. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Everything's kind of stewing right now. Not quite made it to executive session.
It's gurgling.
It's gurgling, it's marinating.